Hello everyone, welcome back. So this is going to be the fourth lesson of Visual Basic, and as I said in the previous video, we're going to be looking at functions. Okay. Now there are three functions we need to know about. Okay, so we're going to be looking at those three individually. But first of all, we need to explain what a function is. Okay. Now a function is actually something quite simple, really, in programming. It is basically It's like a procedure, or a series of instructions that will return one value. So it's always going to return a single value. So it's usually some sort of calculation. You may have came across them in your math subjects. You may be familiar with this here, f of x. Yeah, so you have your function expression. So you could have x plus 2, and then whatever you put into x, you would replace. So if you had f of x for 5, then you would punch that in, you'd substitute the x for 5, and your answer would be 7. Okay. A function in programming is much the same, so you're going to basically give it a couple of inputs, which are called parameters, and then it's going to return one value. Okay. And the ones we're going to be looking at today are the randomize function, which basically generates a random number. We're going to be looking at the length function, which will return the length of a string. So it's a wee bit like a length check for your database validation. You can use it for a length check. And the third and final one we're going to be looking at is the round function. Okay, and it's a mathematical function that will round a number, a real number, to a certain amount of decimal places. Okay, and that's basically it. Yeah. The other one we're going to be looking at, and that's part of the randomized function, is an integer function, okay, which is part of the randomize, but we can use it as well individually. And all the integer function does is it converts a number to an integer. So we'll take a real number and then convert it to an integer. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll start with that one. Okay, so just have a wee look at the form first of all. So I'm using something a wee bit different today. We've got our usual command button, which is where we have our code, but we also have here a picture box. Okay, and I'm just going to show you, this is one of the kind of idiosyncrasies with Visual Basic. You can actually use a picture box to display text. Okay, who'd have knew? So yeah, we're going to just show you it's another way that we can contain our output, and it's a bit like a list box when we use it, because we can keep adding things to it, but it's just going to take a new line and it's not going to let us select them or edit them or do anything with them. Okay, but we'll just show you using the picture box just for something a wee bit different. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is, right, I've got two variables. Okay, I've not declared them yet. Okay, so I'm going to do that now. So I've got a variable that I've assigned called test string. Okay, and obviously the clue's in the name, it's going to be a string, because you can see the value I've set for that is a phrase, I am the walrus, okay, which is a collection of characters. So we've got a test string variable, and it's storing this. We also have a variable called pi, okay, and that's storing the value of the mathematical, value of pi, which is used obviously for calculations for anything involving circles and radiuses and things like that. And as you can see, it's not a whole number, so we need to store it as a real number. So again, in Visual Basic, we call that a single. Okay, so dim pi is single, right? And then I'm just going to show you. So I'm going to show you the two displayed. So if we go pick display dot print, so we're using the print property to print them, and we'll just say test string, and then pick display dot print pi. Okay, so we're going to run the program now, and hopefully, lo and behold, it prints the two of them. Now what you'll notice is we've actually lost a few values, because the single can only store a real number that has so many characters. Okay, it's got a limited range. If we wanted to store more than that, we would use a double. Okay, so if I change this to double, you should see now it should store twice the amount of characters, I think. Okay, so it stores the full value now, right? So we're going to use a double actually, because we really need the double to get all the values for pi stored, right? Because we've got it here. I think it is at 13 decimal places, I think. Yeah, so we've got it there. Anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to convert that to an integer. Okay, so at the moment it is being stored as a real number, as a double. We want to convert it to an integer. So we're going to use the integer function, okay? And it's dead simple. The integer function is just int for integer, and then we just need to basically give it a parameter. So what we want to convert to an integer, in this case it's pi, okay? Now, at the moment, that would carry it out, but it wouldn't return it. Well, it would return a value, but it wouldn't put it anywhere. What we want to say is we want to reassign pi. So we want pi to be set to the basically itself after the integer function has been used. Okay, so I'm going to run that now, and as you can see, it returns a value of 3 now. So basically, it's converting it to an integer. Okay, brilliant. Okay, now that is our integer function. Okay, we can then use that for a random number function. Okay, now this one's a wee bit more involved. Okay, but I'll just kind of explain it through bit by bit. So the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to have to use the called the randomize function. Okay, which doesn't have a parameter, it doesn't have anything passed into it, and all the randomize function does is basically tells Visual Basic. Basically, when it generates a random number, it uses a list of numbers, a predetermined list of numbers, okay, that's set. These numbers aren't random, okay. The first number that it's going to use for its calculation is going to be the same every time, unless we call this, okay, at which point it will change it every time we run the program. So we're going to use a randomize, okay, to get a true random number. We are then going to use the random function along with the integer function to get a random number, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to try and program a die, okay? So if you think of a die, the values are 1 through to 6. We're going to try and make an electronic version of that, okay? So it's like rolling a die. You're going to get 1 to 6. You've got an equal chance of getting any of those values, okay? So the first thing we're going to need is we're going to need a variable to store that. So we'll just call that die value, okay? So, and that is going to be an integer, okay? So I'm just going to jump up here and say dim die value as integer, okay? So die value, right? So how we do this is first of all we're going to use the integer function, okay? So it's going to take whatever value is generated and it's going to convert it to an integer. The reason we're going to do that is what the random function does is it actually generates a random number between 0 and up to 1, almost 1, not quite 1, okay? Not quite 1. So it could be 0 to, you know, 0.999999, you know, but it will never be 1, okay? So we want to basically convert that to an integer, okay? And I'll show you why we want to do that when, you know, obviously when you see the full thing together, it will make more sense. So integer, right? So convert it to an integer. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to use a random function, and in this case, we're not actually going to supply it with a number, okay? It's just going to generate a random number, real number between 0 and 1, okay? So that's all it's going to do. What we're then going to do is we're going to multiply it, right? And we want to basically multiply it by the number at the end of our range, okay? So say for example it needs to be 1 through 6, we're going to multiply it by 6, because we know that it can almost be 1, so if it's almost 1 and we multiply that by 6, we're going to get a 6, okay? Now, let's try that now and see what happens, okay? Okay, oh yeah, and obviously I've not got it to display, yeah. So at the end, so pick display, and then we're going to go for die value, okay? So run that there. Oh yeah, print of course. Yeah, completely missed the property there. Okay, try that again. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take these out. I'm just going to make these into comments so that we're only getting the random number at the moment. That's all we really care about. Okay, so you can see there it's generating random numbers, right? Now there's an issue with this. The issue is it's generating 0, right? Because we could get a 0, you know, with a random number, and the most it's going to generate is 5, and that's because of the way it rounds it, okay? So basically our random function is never going to give us 1. It will give us very close to 1, but not quite 1. When we use the integer function, it's going to round it down, okay? at which point, you know, we're never going to get 6. So what we need to do is we actually need to add one on. Okay, so at the end, basically, once it's done, once it's converted to, it's done its random function, it's generated the random number, it's multiplied it by 6, it's then converted it to an integer, and right at the end we add on a single 1. Okay, and if we do that now, you'll see we start at 1 and we get up to 6. Okay, which would be the equivalent of us rolling a die. Okay, so again, we've got the variable. Okay, and then we've got a couple of functions. So the integer function, and that's working on the random function multiplied by the end of the range, so the top value, and then at the end we need to add 1. If we don't, we're always going to be 1 short. Okay, and that's one way we can get a random number generator. So see if we wanted to change that between you know, values from 1 to 100, we would just add just change that there to 100, and now it should give us random numbers. Oh, got a 1 there. What are the odds of that? There you go. Right. Say for example we wanted it to start at a certain number, so yeah, we wanted it to start at 50. Okay, but again 100 values, so it would be 50 through to 150. You'll see. There you go. Okay, so again, this here is the top of our range, this is here is our starting value. Okay, just put it back to the way it was. Alright, brilliant. Okay, so that's probably the most involved function. Okay, that's a combination of the integer function and the random function. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to show you the other two functions that you need to know. Okay, we're going to work with a length function, which is actually a dead easy function, and all it does is it returns the length, so the number of characters in a string. Okay, so we're going to use our test string I am the walrus. Okay, so at the moment we're just displaying, I'm just going to take these out now actually, we're just displaying the value of the string, which is I am the walrus. We also want to know how many characters there are in it. Okay, so we're going to count the number of characters. So remember, a white space in our ASCII code counts as a character. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, because we've got an exclamation mark as well. We don't count these because these are just basically telling the program that we're working with a string. Okay, so there you go. We've got our 16 there. Okay, so if I run that now, it will just give us the phrase. How do we get it to return the length of the string? Well, very simple. We use the length function and we just pass it one thing, which in this case is the test string. So the value of test string is I am the walrus. Now the only thing is we need to get it to display. So pick display dot print. Nope, display dot print. And instead of displaying test string, it's going to display the length function working on test string. So now what we should expect to see is I am the walrus and then 16. Okay. Now if I changed this here, if I removed, say, the exclamation mark, we would expect it to return 15. There you go. Okay, that's the length function. Why you want to do that would be to check the length of a string. So for example, if you wanted to make sure that a password was at least 8 characters, then you could use some validation there to make sure that you've checked the length of the string. Is it 8 characters or more? Yes it is. Proceed. Otherwise, ask for another password. Okay, so that's the length function. Finally, we're going to be looking at the round function. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these out again. I'm going to leave pi in. Okay, and we are going to basically we're going to use the round function. Okay, and all the round function does is it will round it to a certain number of decimal places. So at the moment we know what pi is. Okay, and to basically to round in Visual Basic, we actually have a collection of functions all under the math kind of categorization. So in this case it's math.round because we're rounding, and we need to give it 2 parameters, so we need to supply it with 2 bits of information. The first one would be what we're actually rounding, which in this case is pi, and the second would be how many decimal places we're rounding it to, which in this case we're going to make it 2, so it should be 3.14, which is probably what you've maybe used in maths. You generally use it to 2 decimal places. You're doing a calculation and you just want to get a rough kind of estimate. Okay, and again we need to display that. So pick display.print math.round pi to 2 decimal places. Let's try that now. Okay, now it's returning 3. Why is it returning 3? Because we're still using our integer function. What we need to do is we need to get rid of that. So we'll just make that comment so it doesn't obviously do that anymore. And now when we run the program, there you go. You can see. So we've got here the full value of pi, and then we've now rounded it to 2 decimal places. Okay, using the math round function. If we wanted to make it into an integer, we could actually just round it to 0. Wouldn't change the data type, but it would still basically round it to a whole number. So again, we try that there. So to 0 decimal places, and there you go. Say we switch it to 5 decimal places. There you go. Okay. And that basically is all our functions that we need to know about. So just to recap, we've looked at the integer function, which converts a value to an integer. And that is, it just takes one input, one parameter here, which is the number, the value you're converting. Okay. The randomize function, which is a bit involved, and it uses the integer function as well. So you've got the randomize, and then you've got the integer function, and then within that integer function, so this is the whole you're passing into the integer function the random function, right, multiplied by 6. So the random function generating its random number to 2 decimal, between 0 and 1, right, up to 1, but not quite 1, right, as a real number, right, with the decimal place, and then it's multiplying it by 6, okay, and then at the end you're adding on 1. So just remember this part here is the top of the range, this here is your starting value, okay, right, and it will generate random numbers to that effect. Then we have our length, so again I'll just highlight that bit there. So is this bit here. So your function is length, len, and then you're passing in the string, okay, and it will return a value, the number of characters in that string. It's like a length check. And finally, our round, okay, which is just math.round. We then have to supply it with 2 parameters, which in this case is the value that we're working on, that we want to round, and then the number of decimal places that we're rounding it to. Okay, those are our 2 parameters, the inputs to our function. And remember, the function always returns a single value. It doesn't matter what the function is, it returns a single value. Okay, so hopefully that's been helpful. If you're going to join me for the next lesson, we're going to be looking at validation, okay, using a conditional loop. Okay, so I've already looked at a fixed loop. We're going to look at a different type of construct called a conditional loop, and basically that will allow us to repeat a section of code until a condition is true or not true, depending on how we set it up. Okay, and we're going to get that to basically check a value that's being entered by the user and make sure that it falls within a certain range or meets a certain criteria. Okay, so again, I'm just going to save this program so we've got this for reference, and I'll just take the comments off here. Okay, and I know this won't work because it's the integer function, but that's fine. So I'm going to save project as, this is lesson 4, we'll just call it functions. Okay, and then lesson 4 functions. Okay, right, all done. Okay, so I'll see you next time, and that'll be the last video in the input section. Okay, bye for now.